Today's video was brought to you by my patrons. I recently reworked my entire Patreon to make pretty much every single tier cheaper and to give you more for it. I've also made it to where you can subscribe annually instead of monthly for a 10% discount. So if you've ever wanted to support the channel a little bit less, but for a longer time, now is the perfect time to go to patreon.com/explanationpoint to find out how, link in the description. Now on to this. Your Lie in April is the animated equivalent of a John Green novel, wherein the main character's special interest is classical music, and the Manic Pixie Dream Girl's origin story is nebulous blood disease. Personally, I do not like it. I have been a sad and lonely teenage boy waiting for a larger-than-life feminine presence to lift me from my depressive mire like The Claw, choosing alien squeaky toys for ascension, and let me tell you, shows that glorify that kind of attitude do not sit well with me anymore. But I am an analyst, and part of being an analyst is looking at things objectively. And while the story of Your Lie in April is a bit predictable and trite and morally questionable, the presentation of that story is unfortunately quite good. I could go on about scene composition or dialogue, but this show is about music. And the songs that were chosen for it each have some kind of thematic purpose in the work that begins with the song's history and ends with the personal journey of a cartoon musician. I was going to write a video where I went over all of the songs and what thematic impacts they had on the work, but I finished writing the section about one of them and already had 2,500 words on my hands. So since I don't feel like editing a 40-minute long video, let's talk about just one. Ludwig van Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 14 in C-sharp minor marked Quasi una Fantasia Opus 27 No. 2 is the perfect choice of opening number for this series. Commonly called the Moonlight Sonata by the lay people, this piece is a fantastic musical and thematic entry point to the series. First off, I don't think it's going to be controversial to say that the world of classical music can be a bit impenetrable to new enjoyers. Songs from back then follow a completely different musical structure than what we're used to in the modern day, and the culture around classical music has a reputation for being, snobby and elitist. These things combine to leave a casual listener with no interest in pursuing the topic beyond the metaphorical door. So for a show that is about classical musicians, it makes sense to ease viewers past that gate right away by starting with the door. I know practically nothing about classical music, and I'm willing to bet that you also don't. But I know this song, and you also do. Using this song is this show's way of saying that you don't have to know what an etude is, or the difference between a harpsichord and a hurdy-gurdy. Opening with Kosei playing Moonlight Sonata is an invitation, an easily recognizable piece that welcomes the viewer into a world that might otherwise have put them off. Thing is, the show doesn't sacrifice the symbolic effect of the piece for its recognizability. Even if the Moonlight Sonata were a completely unknown piece and Beethoven were the 1800s equivalent of an indie artist, it would still be an excellent introduction to Kosei as a character, both because of the specific choice of song and because of the man who wrote it. Beethoven shares a lot of similarities with Kosei, most notably that of being a pianist who famously cannot hear his own notes. Beethoven was the kind of composer who believed that artists were basically gods, enriching the world through their creations. His entire sense of self-worth was built on the idea that he was a great composer. And when he lost the ability to hear music, he became astoundingly depressed and temperamental and even violent at times. But Beethoven felt music calling to him. Like Kosei, he could not give it up, even if his senses were going to make it hard for him, and he continued composing music until the day he died, when he raised his fist to curse an unjust god and lightning struck from the heavens as he drew his last breath. Yes, that happened. But the shared deafness is nowhere near the only thing that Kosei has in common with Beethoven. Beethoven's father, Johann, always wanted to succeed on the musical circuit. His father, also named Ludwig, was the director of music for the local aristocratic scene, so Johann was always expected to be a great musician. Thing is, he couldn't hack it, so instead he chose to pursue his passion for alcohol and domestic violence. When Ludwig the Younger was born and showed even the slightest hint of musical aptitude, Johann became determined to make him the next Mozart, pouring all of his dead dreams and latent ambitions into his son. And by dead dreams and latent ambitions, I mean fist. Yes, Ludwig van Beethoven was expected to succeed vicariously for a physically abusive parent who couldn't make it in the musical world on their own. Same song, different key. Then there's the name of the piece. Moonlight is a very important symbol in Your Lie in April. It serves to show that hope and happiness can exist even in the darkest of times. There are so many scenes in this show that happen at night, but the nights are almost never dark and dreary. They're filled with vibrant blues and purples and the light of fireflies and pretty much always the moon. But the thing is that Beethoven did not name it that. The common name of the song was actually given to it by a critic named Rejection, and the rest of the public just kind of went along with it. The idea that an artist's vision for a piece can be changed by an outside source applies well to Kosei. His entire identity is being a piano player, but it's not like he chose that life. That path was chosen for him, along with nicknames like Slave to the Score and the Human Metronome. Rejection reacted to the suggestion of Moonlight in Beethoven's piece, and he found a name that the general public vibed with and decided to ascribe to the work, regardless of what Beethoven's intentions were or whatever feelings or images he was trying to evoke. The name that Beethoven gave the piece was Sonata quasi una fantasia, which translates to sonata in the style of a fantasia, with a fantasia being a kind of musical composition with heavy improvisational roots, with the implication being that you're supposed to let the music kind of guide you as you're playing it. Now, I am no musical historian, so take this with a grain of salt, but from what I've heard, back in the day, performances of classical music were somewhat improvised, at least when it came to solo performers. Beethoven was actually renowned for his ability to improvise, and he would challenge upstart composers to improvisation competitions in front of whatever nobles happened to be present. Like, hey you think you're hot stuff? Bet you can't play. Nonsense! Oh, snap! The entire deal with Kosei's mother was that she taught Kosei that what was on the score was the only thing that was important, that you had to honor the composer's intention and play the piece exactly as they wrote it. But when it comes to the very first thing we hear Kosei play, even the composer did not believe that. With Sonata quasi una fantasia, Beethoven is inviting the musician to interpret the score, to put themselves into it, to do what he did when writing it and let the music guide the song as it is being played. The song is itself a rejection of Saki Arima's philosophy. Or her teachings, anyway. The show does kind of muddle all that when it tries to shoehorn in some pathetic redemption for a truly monstrous person. And Kosei's relationship with that truly monstrous person is the most interesting thing about the choice of Moonlight Sonata as an opening number, because Kosei's relationship with Saki is a sonata, or it's written with the same structure as one. All cards on the table here, this is the part of the script that goes a bit deeper into music theory stuff than I am comfortable with. I have no training or formal education in this, so it's likely that I'm going to get some details wrong here, but the broad strokes should be right. Sonatas are written a bit differently than most modern songs. Instead of a verse-chorus-verse pattern that we're used to in the modern day, they follow a three-part structure consisting of an exposition, a development, and a reconciliation, which you might notice is fairly similar to your standard third-grade plot diagram. Sonatas usually have two different musical themes that are introduced in the exposition, messed around with in the development, and brought together in the reconciliation. From what I could tell while researching this video, sonatas are meant to evoke the idea of a story. And when these themes were being explained in different articles, they were often talked about in terms of characters. In the Moonlight Sonata's first movement, for example, those themes are that deep, regular bass triad of dun 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 dun, and the plucky treble notes that make up what we would think of as the melody, the dun da dun dun da dun. I could have just played the song. Why didn't I just play the song? At the beginning of the song, in the exposition, these two themes are introduced in different but complementary keys. If one theme is played in G, for example, the other won't be played in G, but it also won't be played in G sharp. It'll be played in C or something else that sounds good with G. In the development, you just go heckin' crazy with it. Those themes will be played in different keys, different tempos, and generally experimented with so that the listener can appreciate how they're alike and how they're different. And then, at the end of the movement, during the reconciliation, they are brought together and played in the same key. This is the exact same structure in which Kosei's relationships with Saki and Kaori are depicted. If I were to describe a character in Your Lie in April as the dying female musician who, upon learning that she has little time left on this earth, decides to dedicate her last moments to making Kosei Arima become a competition pianist, and also sometimes she hits him, it's one of them. Saki and Kaori are very similar characters in a lot of ways, from their passion for music to their vague illnesses to their reliance on Kosei Arima for finding meaning in life. Yet, at the beginning of the show, the series goes out of its way to paint them as differently as it possibly can, to make them seem diametrically opposed. foes. Saki is shown with a washed-out color palette, with only Kosei's red blood popping out in the scenes that do have some color. Kaori scenes are hyper-saturated and very bright, often with cherry blossom petals or other flowers to emphasize her youth and beauty. Kaori's eyes are huge and emphasized, and they often change color depending on the mood of the scene, while Saki's eyes are even the music associated with them couldn't be more different. Kaori is typically accompanied by chaotic staccato strings or this plucky piano number, while Saki's background music is droning and echoing with lone piano notes and long, menacing strings. Kaori is young and vital, Saki is old and frail. Kaori plays violin, Saki plays piano, etc. But when we get further in the story, those lines between the two start to get blurrier and meld together. This would be the equivalent of the second part of the sonata, the development. Starting around episode 4, when Kaori collapses on stage, the viewer begins to see that the half-dead child abuser and the three-quarters alive child savior are alike in a very important way, and that reframes everything about both characters. With Kaori, we see that Kosei again stands to lose the thing that most connects him to the world of music. This is around the time when Kaori takes on a more directly educational role, helping Kosei learn to play music in a new way, like how Saki helped him to learn to play music at all. We start seeing cherry blossoms show up in Kosei's CPTSD episodes on stage. We see Kaori portrayed like this, and Saki portrayed like this, and we get that very pathetic and somewhat offensive attempt to humanize Saki and make her more sympathetic, where she says that she just doesn't have time to not beat the tar out of her progeny, so she and Kaori can't be that different. But then there's the scene with the fireflies. When Kaori and Kosei are looking at fireflies and she says that she won't always be around to help him, the insert song that plays over that scene is introduced with the opening bars of Liebeslied, which is literally Saki's theme song, in which Kaori suggests that the two should play on stage together before leaving him alone after a medical emergency. And from that point on, she has to listen to Kosei's playing without being physically present, like the specter of Saki in the House of the Auditorium. And finally, the two disparate themes of the sonata are brought back together and played in the same key, the key of dead. But not only are they joined together with Kaori's death, making Kosei lose yet another mentor and source of musical inspiration, but also through the circumstances surrounding it. Kosei's main motivation for playing piano was to make his mother better, but he never achieved that with Saki. He does succeed in giving new life to Kaori, whose parents comment that she was basically walking around waiting to die until she met him, and that he inspired her to keep living. And after her death, we can see the impact that she had on him. We see him playing piano and smiling, just like he did way back at the beginning of his life when he played piano for the first time, thus showing that Kaori was a mentor who reignited Kosei's love of music, just like Saki made it happen in the first place. Same song, different key. Or same key? Just cut that line. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I have a lot of problems with Your Lie in April. It glorifies harmful character archetypes, it makes an inelegant attempt to humanize a child abuser, and treats its tragedy with a bit too much soap opera dramaticism for my taste. But the music is both gorgeous and thematically resonant, chosen with care by an author who clearly knew a lot about what they were writing about. I wish I had more time and energy to talk about the rest of the songs, but this is going to have to do for now. My brain absolutely refused to let me work on this video, so it's coming out a lot later than I intended. But I stuck with it, and I managed to get it out. Hope you all enjoyed. Today's lucky patron is Nastulus, a $1 patron who's been hanging around for about 2 years now. And last video's lucky patron, because I forgot about it, is Alec Nicholas Gutierrez. Thank you for supporting the channel over the last year, and sorry for not shouting you out in the Pillow Boys video. Take a look at this list of lovely people who help me keep my lights on and sometimes even buy a little snack at the grocery store. If you would like to support the channel while getting cool rewards for yourself, like being part of our weekly video game hangouts and playing on our Minecraft server and joining our monthly anime club discussions, then go to patreon.com/explanationpoint to find out how. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, bell, etc. And until next time, this has been Explanation Point, signing out.